Finally, we're able to last night through a consensus model to be able to provide guidance for the schedule subcommittee to move forward and to come back with options, A, B, C, and D, that contain some of the components of interdisciplinary teaming and looking at a flexible schedule which would incorporate an advisory model, which you heard me talk about already at the high school. We met with Jeff Sherwood last week and talked about fiscal and bargaining impacts. So he's here today to share with you a little bit about our conversation and his role in this whole process.
Yeah, I always feel like I'm the buzzkill.
You are. You're the encourager. You were encouraging
That's
last
right.
week.
Well, I think that we need to approach this from the perspective that we want to make it work. But you just need to be aware of a few issues, some challenges. The current collective bargaining agreement is essentially structured around a 6-period day, five teaching periods and a planning period for a teacher. All the block scheduling and intervention time now is done on a waiver basis. So, in really practical terms, if we were to do that on a uniform basis across all middle schools, that is something we would have to engage the association with. Because the current contract language would bar that unless we had either a waiver or a bargaining language around that. I think one of the things we have to pay attention to with more flexibility is, what does that mean in terms of staff qualifications? How do we leverage this with our current staff? One easy way to create more flexibility is to have lots more staff, but then that becomes a budget issue. So we have to think about teachers that can teach core academic subjects as well as electives. There's a little bit more flexibility in a 6-8 middle school because essentially with a K-8 certificate you can teach anything, but that doesn't mean you can teach anything. So we have to think through those implications. Also the idea of doing some kind of rotation of electives across quarters versus the current semester model is something we're going to have to discuss with the association. I think the other thing we have to be really cognizant of is there are going to be equity issues across levels. So creating more collaborative time or planning time at the middle school level. I started to say junior high.
I know, we can still do that. We get stuck.
Middle school level is going to create questions about equity in elementary and high school, where there's currently equity in terms of planning time across all levels. If we were to make those changes, we could expect elementary teachers and high school teachers to want the same amount of planning time. That's clearly a bargainable issue, and we'll certainly be discussing that with the association. But we just have to be aware going into this, what makes sense, what we can afford, along with what's best in the middle school model. So finding that balance is going to be a challenge.
Why does it give them more? Where does it give them more time, the teachers, to plan and collaborate versus K-5?
Well,
We're just structuring it differently.
Yeah, it depends on how this ends up being structured. It doesn't necessarily, but the kind of ideal middle school model would. So as we're sort of looking at flexible scheduling, how that affects what the teacher's day looks like, related to our current contract language, which is very rigid, 5-period day with a planning period, all those kinds of things. We just have to be aware that could create potential equity issues. It's just one of those things we need to be aware of.
Were you able to look at contracts from some of the districts where they travel and saw schools operating in that way?
We haven't done that kind of analysis, although our collective bargaining agreement language isn't unusual at all. It's not that it's, again, we're just raising it as something we're going to have to discuss with the association. It's not that it's insurmountable at all, but just we're going to have to engage in the discussion. And we'll certainly look at those things.
And our task is to look at how do we have options that fit within our current current bargaining agreement, option A, B, C, and D. And there's some models that we've looked at from other school districts. Common planning time, can we orchestrate a schedule where teachers have common planning time? It's not an additional planning time, but it's common planning time. We have our early release Wednesdays that we can utilize for a collaborative time and teacher work. So Jeff's been very helpful, and we will be meeting with him monthly to kind of keep him abreast and run options and things by him so that we are not operating way off and somewhere that we can't get to, because we have to work within constraints.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think we want to be aware of what we're thinking about that may have an impact somewhere else in the system, and we're addressing that early and taking the time we need to keep things aligned as we move through this process.
Is there going to be some of that? You know, we talked about articulation from elementary to high school, and philosophically what the needs are at each level. I mean, so in the middle school, philosophically, you know, that time and intention to, you know, different planning times might be look and the needs are a lot different than they are at elementary or at high school. I don't know. So I don't know if time will be spent with the association all the way through. You know, okay, some may not understand. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just in terms of.
Well, yeah, so historically we have, there's been the driver has been equity across grade levels for planning time, and there's a fair amount of bargaining history on that. It's not precisely accurate, but we do provide 45-minute blocks at elementary. We're going to be bargaining a new contract right in the middle of all this, so in essence, perfect opportunity actually to address a lot of these issues, and I think, you know, making sure that the association leadership understands where we're going with this and is on board with, you know, certainly a lot of teacher engagement in this process. So it's just good to be aware of what the challenges are.
I remember when we visited High Tech High, the teachers had a great deal of buy-in into the concept. And that was a big part of why they were willing to change up their lives, maybe not substantially, but to an extent to meet that need, because they had a lot of buy-in into what they were doing.
And we currently do some of these things on a waiver process, and where the teachers are exactly doing that. They're saying, well, this is what we want to do. I think that is changing that to a systemic basis, I guess, that we're just going to have to think through and make sure we're, you know, at the end of this process, we have a framework on our collective bargaining agreement that permits us the flexibility to do this. And
One of our,
I was just going to say, there's kind of an underlying question here, is equal, equitable. Is that really what's necessary? And that's a conversation for another day.
and one of our tasks we know is to get that input, John, as you mentioned, you know, the teachers and the support that they have within the system for these types of initiatives or schedules or advisory. I'll speak to that. We've heard loud and clear from every junior high and every high school that I have visited, and I've been to all of them, that advisory is critical. And what that looks like may vary a little, but that time in the day for that significant connection with an adult to a student. So our hope is that as we build that and we go out to junior highs and get feedback on our proposal, that then that generates that interest and that capacity moving forward, that when we go to bargaining, that we need to have this. This is important for kids and for what we're doing. So that's our hope.
but also keeping, and I think one of the challenges is making sure we're keeping enough flexibility in whatever we end up bargaining. Right now, things are very prescriptive, and getting to a framework for more flexibility, I think, is going to be very important.
All right, thanks, John.
Sure.
So one of our subcommittees we've got working is, I know you guys have to leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, good night. Thank you.
Always fun.
So what?
I'm going to have to get a second one.
Oh, yeah.
That's two more years to go, right?
Yeah. The binder's getting big. One of the components, of course, of middle schools is athletics and intramurals. And so we recognized early on as a task force that, yes, we're going to have those, and those are important for connecting kids to school. So I put together a subcommittee that is currently working on what will the athletic intramural program look like at a middle school, different than a junior high. And again, wording back our philosophy to what it talks about in This We Believe and what we want for kids. And our 3 core tenets that we've come up with thus far would be to maximize athletic participation. So we want as many kids as possible being able to engage, implement a no-cut policy, everybody plays, because right now we have a cut policy in junior high for 7th and 8th grade. And then intramural programs at all schools. And so we came up with this relatively quickly. I was just, I was glorious. It was glorious because they all realized the value of kids participating, and a couple of our parents on the task force talked about some of their friends, and when they come home from practice on Friday and the kid, there's a list posted and this kid makes it and this kid doesn't, and this parent calls this parent calls this parent, very eloquently, and how difficult that is for kids at that age level. So we were able to get to these tenets pretty quickly. Now what we're doing is doing an analysis on what that will budgetarily impact the system, because if we have a no-cut policy with everybody plays, then there is a cost to that. It's increased coaches, increased supervision. It's also intramural stipends for the school, for the coordinators. So there's one-time costs and then there's ongoing costs. And so our job is to price that out and work with Jeff on the coaching piece and Lydia with budget, and then we have to wrestle with that. What does the participation fee look like? What is the ASB card fee? Do we increase? Do we decrease? Does that limit participation, et cetera?
So what do you have in mind for intramurals? Because I've seen it at different schools.
So currently the thinking was we have 4 seasons at junior high, so we would reduce those seasons by 1 week. So that would give us a 2-week, they call it right now dead week. So there's a week in between the 4, that's a 1 week. We would reduce the regular season competition by 1 week, so we would have 2 weeks that we would call intramural week. And during that 2-week window, we would have a variety of intramural programs, and each school could determine what works for their school community. It would be after school. We could utilize the activity buses. That's one of the other factors, is the activity bus after school, increasing from 3 days a week to 4 days a week. So there's a cost to that. So that's in our proposal. But it would be the school determining what would those intramural programs look like.
And so again, kind of an
So it'd be
exploratory model, like electives?
Yeah, it'd be 2 weeks a week, 4 times during the year. So 2, 4, 6, 8.
Maybe play around volleyball or whatever.
Could be volleyball, could be floor hockey, could be badminton. We talked about
Frisbee.
ultimate frisbee out on the field.
Oh, okay.
We talked about just dance, using the Wii during the winter months in the commons. I mean, there was a lot of,
Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas.
So in addition to athletics, or this would be the athletics?
no, this is in addition.
In addition.
Be like
But more-
intersections.
More involvement, so the kids who might not want to try out for a
Right.
full commitment of a
Yeah.
season.
Right.
Can still come for those 2 weeks
Right.
and.
Mhm.
Or kids' with skill set might lend to a different activity.
Further development?
So the no-cut policy is for the intramurals or for the athletics?
No, that's for the athletic piece.
For the athletics. So, it's not my strong suit, but things like basketball or soccer, where, how does that, the capital?
You might have more,
No, not cost,
you
just
might have
having.
more teams.
More teams,
Oh, more teams.
so an increase of a coach.
Right.
So we still have we have a 7th grade team and an 8th grade team, and then we have a 7th, 8th regional team. So the additional cost is that 3rd coach, and that regional team may not play the same schedule as the other 7th and 8th grade team. So it might play a reduced schedule, but it would still play.
So,
We're still working out fine details.
would just love to have a 4-hour conversation again on C&D teams. Would it be?
Uh-oh.
Are you, it's just, there's 3 teams at a high school and you just, lottery, or is it envisioning it being ranked?
Junior high, middle school, so not high school. So high school.
Right.
So the coaches, the team talked about, and we're still learning this, and we have to put it in, we have to put put the parameters and around it. From what I'm relaying and what I understand is it's a tiered approach. So we still have a team that is, quote, your A team, and there's a B team, and there's a C team.
So everybody gets to play, but
ABC.
we're still gonna have the competitive.
Everybody plays and it's
My
still the
child needs to be
competitive.
on the A team.
But nobody gets cut.
Right.
Right.
Everybody will
And-
get to play if they want to play basketball.
Right.
They're still.
And kids can move within teams depending on if sometimes someone will get sick and is out for a couple weeks, so we might move and bring someone up. And so there's still a competitive nature because they didn't want to get rid of that altogether and we didn't think that we could sell that.
I was just envisioning,
So
and
we
when
had-
that first came out, I thought, oh.
So we're
there's
trying to
things
mix
we're
the
gonna
best
have.
of all worlds.
That's a good idea.
And it's
I like
really,
that.
so it is gonna be, there's an expense to this, and so we've got to lay that out and see if it's feasible or not.
I'm just thinking limited basketball courts, limited tennis courts, limited facilities to accommodate this.
Yeah. What I have been most impressed with is Janet, I sat there with that same thing, that first, what you just said about,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, what
yeah.
if there's 50 basketball players?
Yeah.
The coaches said, we can do this, here, let me show you how. And they
Oh,
got on the
excellent,
board and they
excellent.
drew it out, and they said, this is how it can work. We can have practice here, and they had it all, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So they are committed to that, and they would have to train and do professional development for the other coaches, though. I mean, this is PD across the system.
But it's not unusual in the community to work on a space this big, because there's not enough fields. So translating that into our schools, you know, training, after-school training, and you can divide a basketball court up into 8, 9 sections, and the kids literally learn how to work within their little section. So I think community-wise, people are used to that. I know, you know, where my husband trains, they have 50 teams on a little field, and they get a patch.
Yeah.
You know, so,
The soccer
I
coach
mean,
talked
truly.
about how to take a field and divide it.
yeah, and divide it. So, I mean, I
And then we
think it's a great question, but I
Yes.
agree with you that once you start breaking it down, they figure out how to work their space.
And we're currently running, you know, we are running some morning practices optional throughout the system currently right now for junior high. So whether we would continue that or not, but we are running some optional
Wednesday
practices in the mornings, Wednesday mornings, because we cut a day. So. Well, also important is curriculum. So athletics is most important. So Obi's going to touch base on
Yeah,
that.
so obviously there's going to be some shifts in curriculum. The goal is that the 17-18 school year, that we're not adopting new curriculum or not trying to add this because we're going to have enough transitions going on. So either to try to get it done prior to or after, and when can those things happen. However, with that being said, there's curriculum that doesn't exist right now. Like 6th grade science, what does that look like? Or 6th grade social studies, what does that look like? Or 6th grade health curriculum, what does that look like? So there are tasks, that's what's the right word, but there's going to be some teacher teams that are going to be put together to look at those and see what does it make sense. For example, with 6th grade science, and they've already been doing some of that work with the adoption of the next gen science standards, and they met earlier this week, I think it was last Thursday? So they met last Thursday to begin some of that work, and they're very excited about the opportunities. My science teacher is very excited about the opportunity and kind of how many possibilities are open, and then what makes the most sense to create a 6, 7, 8 science piece. And they're going to do the same with social studies. For English language arts, we've just adopted Springboard, and for the 7th and 8th grade, and so Gretchen, who does the curriculum stuff, she's going to be asking some 6th grade teachers to pilot the 6th grade Springboard next school year to kind of see what that's like and kind of vet that through. It's, from talking to my teachers, it's very rigorous curriculum, and so the 7th and 8th grade, so assuming the 6th grade is as well, and it's tied tightly to the Common Core standards. So I'm getting some teachers to pilot that and just kind of see what that looks like, because it's already been approved as far as CMAC is concerned, and probably where we'll land.
Did anyone pilot it before? You said you're
Oh,
piloting it?
we piloted 7, 8, and 9.
Okay.
Springboard.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't done the 6th grade yet.
Okay.
Yes. With math, right now, the 6th grade curriculum, when we have 6th grade math, it's whole course 1. There's going to be some work done and looking to see how tightly tied that is to the Common Core state standards and making sure it kind of fits there, and is there something else that ties tighter. So that's work that's going to underway. And then we've already hit on a little bit with the elective programs, and we're in the middle school task force, we kind of refer to them as exploratory programs, and what do those look like. So some of that decision is going to come out of the middle school task force, and or the recommendation will come out of the middle school task force, and do we have an exploratory wheel, or what does that look like, and what do we do with music, and can we build a schedule that allows us for year-long music and exploratory wheels, and the answer to that is yes. We're in the process of doing that. And then with health fitness, does it make sense for sixth graders to have health fitness every day, all year? And if so, then what does that health curriculum look like? What does that fitness curriculum look like? When you start reading about their physical development, it's going to tell you that, yeah, it makes sense for them to have a lot of activity. And then is it appropriate for sixth graders? Sixth grade development, their bone development and structure is different. So taking a sixth grader and putting them in the weight room and having them lift a lot of heavy weights probably isn't a great idea. So what do those pieces look like? So those will be recommendations come out of there.
Oh, but you were a middle school principal before.
Yes, assistant principal, yes. And then these other things, what do we do with world languages? Currently, we now have 8th graders taking world languages. Do we keep world languages or options for world languages at the middle schools? And then what world languages do we make accessible? Health fitness, I just talked about. Music, is it, do we continue with band? And I think the answer is yes, choir and orchestra, and what do those things look like? And then certainly there could be exploratory options around music, but exploratory options around some of the STEM classes we already have, the fine arts, the kind of drama pieces, and giving kids access to experiment with things, because one of the things when we go through this is it's important that kids are in the kind of the philosophy behind the wheel. It's important for kids to be given opportunities to access stuff that they might not already choose because they might find they have an interest or a skill there. So having a kid go through a robotics class, they might find out they're really into robotics, or have a kid go through a drama class, which they may not sign up for because their friends aren't signing up for whatever, if it's part of a wheel that they're going through, then they suddenly find out that they have strengths or interests they have, and find out they don't have strengths or interests in something. And so really that's what middle school's about, exploration, experimenting, and learning about yourself.
When you talk about the wheels, do you put a number of wheels that you're thinking of? Just still open?
I can say a number, but it doesn't, it's not going to mean anything because we haven't really gone through.
Right,
through
it's
that.
just wide open.
It's,
Yeah.
right now, right, we haven't
Thinking about-
tackled it as a task force. Said these are the wheels. There's a subcommittee in the task force that's done some research on electives and asked them and looked around at some other schools and what do they do. But some of it's going to be has to do with what teachers we have in our buildings that are qualified to do what, and how do we get kids around that, and does it make sense to have 6th and 7th graders in a wheel and 8th graders not, and kind of what are some of those pieces are all decisions that we haven't landed on a definitive answer.
But I heard you say it affirmatively, because the thing that concerns me then is that what happens with music, you do need that. You can't just explore trumpet one day and then not again. So you can run those concurrently.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, and there's the schedule options that we've looked at. We have not looked at a schedule option, wouldn't look at a schedule option that said, we gotta do everything exploratory, and now a child who's got this music skill or music interest and has been learning, and suddenly you get it for 9 weeks and then forget about it until you get to 8th grade or something like that, so.
Right, but you can still do
But you can still get
exploratory
access,
if you're doing music.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good.
It's creativity with scheduling.
Yeah. So there are ways to build both those options.
Awesome.
I will go on record again in a new group as saying that I think world language opportunity, the younger the better. So
Yes.
for me, preschool would be ideal, but if I can't get it until middle school, then it's going to be it. But I love that that's under consideration as an option.
Well, I mean, I agree with Janet, because the, research on language development demonstrates that the earlier that you learn language, the more you learn it in one piece of your brain versus two separate areas of your brain. Yeah, so by the time you're 12 or 13,
Did you say that?
14, you can't develop it in one single area anymore.
Did you say research shows that?
I did not. I said the research. What did I say? I actually was very cautious in choosing a word there.
Any other questions on curriculum transition?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a really random question.
Mine's frozen. I heard that you said that you do not want to ideally not have new curriculum for 2017. Ideally, which makes sense. But that you're going to need new curriculum for sixth graders in science and social studies. What's the timeline? Because my logical brain was going, wait.
Well, we're going to try to pilot in a few classrooms, something this next fall for sixth graders, but we know there is no way that we're not going to have teachers doing new curriculum when they move to sixth grade to
Right.
teach and when they move to ninth grade at the high school or 10th grade or whatever it is. So we know it's going to occur.
So you're not
going to limit it.
This is, again, I was picturing the timeline, we're not likely to be rolling out sixth grade science curriculum in 2016.
No, we're not going to roll it out full scale. We're going to roll it in 2017. We're going to pilot the next couple of years.
Okay.
It wouldn't make sense to have a whole bunch of teachers teaching something
Right.
that they'd only do for a year.
Right.
So we're trying to align it. We're trying to look at capacity.
Okay.
Really quick, back to her language question. Are we looking at that in the elementary school? Offering any languages during this whole transition process, having that options available?
Not beyond, the elementary group has been talking about the possibility of splitting a strand of the dual language program.
Having two immersion.
So, yeah, so having two immersion strands. So right now we have two strands that are both at Wooden, perhaps looking at keeping one strand at Wooden and maybe moving another strand to a different location in the district that would be appropriate. But that's about the extent of that I'm aware of the rule.
Is there a reason why that wouldn't be a part of the conversation? I mean,
Probably
I don't know if
because
any schools even do it in elementary.
Yeah,
It is a question.
I don't know specifically how to respond to that other than we just haven't traditionally had or other than the dual language program, that's been sort of the extent of formal world language education at the elementary level.
And the days so full, if you think about
Yeah,
trying to make sure we get music embedded versus before, after school.
you know, I think a really interesting question would be sort of back to the 1351 question. If the legislature were somehow to find a way to fund that, and we don't have the classroom space to actually achieve the class size reduction, could that be a permissible use of some of those new staffing resources would be to look at? And I don't know the answer to that one, it will be buried in the regulations of what the legislature may fund, but, or would they insist that you had teachers that were actually teaching in what they would consider core academic areas to achieve?
Yeah, if you have
some
music
level of
and then a
class size?
language and the kids could
Right, could you-
choose either one or
Well, or
rotate
could you
through
look at
or
adding
something.
either adding it to your specialist schedule or making it an option or a choice within your specialist schedule, whether there would be flexibility to consider that.
I guess my linear brain, following what Janet was saying, is you need to have it more embedded in middle school so that you're not doing an elementary, skip middle school, picking it back up. That
I
might-
think you have
We
embedded
always-
it all the
Well,
way
yeah,
up.
that's what I'm saying, but
Ideally, that's what I'm saying
ideally,
as
that's
well.
right,
Yeah.
but you couldn't have that conversation in isolation without also having it firmly in place.
You do have to think of the systemic issues over
Yeah.
there, yeah, for sure. And that's the, that's the
By the
issue.
time they're in middle school, they're on their fourth year.
Well,
By the time
and
they're-
that's the issue, when people will
They're
occasionally
down
come
there.
forward, why don't we offer more Chinese or this or that, the other thing, and it's all a great idea to launch a language program, you really have to be able to sustain at least 3, if not 4 years of that language for college-bound kids, and so you've got to be able to have that pipeline at the beginning, or you're going to potentially disadvantage kids if there's no second or third year option.
Middle school's definitely a start to move it lower.
So what does grading look like in middle school? Is it A through F?
Let me see, that might be further on. Let's
Is
see.
that further on?
Let me keep
Can I
going for a
spoil
minute.
it? All right.
Can I hold that? Can I hold that? Okay. So, right, I think that someone already referenced that the shared decision-making leadership teams have been reading this book at the middle schools, and then they have been leading some of the professional development on district days within the junior high buildings. And then I was in the office one day and Ann had a couple of boxes of these books, and I said, okay, what do we do? She goes, well, all the schools want all the staff to get those books, so all the junior high staffs are reading that book. And it creates for good conversation and collaboration around middle school. It also will help teachers discern whether they are interested in teaching at a middle school or if they want to go to a high school. So we're just very thankful for the work. The junior high principals, I cannot say enough about the team with Dawn and Obi's leadership. And really it is a shared leadership of them designing learning targets for district days and focusing their staffs around the 4 essential attributes that are in our mission statement, and really working with staff and getting their input on a variety of things. So we know that that collective wisdom is going to help us down the road. Pathway information workshops, Carolyn mentioned that at the elementary presentation. One of the things that we did hear from our elementary task force is that we're missing informing elementary teachers around the middle school work. So we're hosting 6 information workshops. They can come to anything that they want to, anyone that they want to. We'll be engaging their input. It will engaging them really in seeking input from them about what it's like to teach 6th graders, because they teach 6th graders right now. We don't, so we didn't think it would go over very well if we told them how to teach 6th graders, so we better ask them how to teach 6th graders. So it's a collaborative dialogue, and then we have parent pathway information nights coming in May. I already mentioned those. The work ahead. So here I can get to a couple of your questions. Subcommittee to explore the alignment of heterogeneous grouping and our current practice of challenge courses. Yes, the research does speak specifically to this book about heterogeneous groupings, and which would mean that that would be in direct opposition to our current practice of challenge courses. So we have talked about really digging in and hitting it head on and getting the subcommittee together to work on what would it look like in a middle school if we did not have challenge classes, because it can't just happen tomorrow, because lots of work needs to be done around what do we do with math, what does it look like for social studies, what are the professional development and instructional practices that teachers need to have in their toolbox in order to teach to a full spectrum of learners, what does differentiation look like. So there's work to be done. We've met with NSCA last week on Thursday and put together a proposed, it's just a one-page document that outlines the scope of the work of the committee and who will be included in the committee. It will be members of the task force, it will be parents, it will be teachers collaboratively selected with NSCA, which is our usual practice. It will be principals. Obadiah will represent the task force. Gretchen Schaefer will facilitate it. We'll begin our work in May, hoping to come forward with a recommendation next January of 2016. So that's our tentative timeline, and we certainly, we have a copy of that document if you'd like to see it. But that is where we are starting to dig in on that discussion. We launched it at the task force in February, but it's too big. It's too big for that group, and we really need that. We need everybody invested in it, and the teachers that are currently doing it that can be in on the discussion. So both general and challenge practices.
So where does AAP fall in?
So AAP, we did originally have it tacked on. I've taken it off because really with AAP, we know that the legislature, we have to serve our AAP population, our gifted population. Currently, we're doing it at 2 sites. The conversation will eventually occur. Are we going to expand that to additional sites? Because we talked about the north end, and we can't do the capacity right now. But really the discussion, we have concerns around the AAP, but that's not where we're hearing the major
Right.
concerns.
But-
It's around the challenge piece.
Oh, but would this eliminate the ability to have an AAP type
Oh,
program
no,
No.
in your home middle school?
no.
It wouldn't.
That
Can you
discussion-
serve AAP in this model
That
right in their
discussion
classes?
will still occur.
Okay.
Yes, we can serve, we're currently serving our AAP students in clusters in some of our home schools. Dawn can speak to that at
Okay.
Skyview.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it reaches all kids, this model, right?
Mhm.
We are considering with EDPF, is there an ability, once the boundaries are shifted, could we potentially have AAP at
within each pathway, and whether there'd be the numbers to be able to do that.
A self-contained class.
Self-contained AAP.
And does the law require a self-contained class?
No, it does not.
This requires service.
Right.
So it's a service delivery model question.
So we don't really need any satellite
No, I mean,
program for any of that.
there's nothing in the law that would require highly capable services as we provide them in EAP and AAP, but those are local decisions we've made as to how we feel most effectively to meet the requirements of serving these populations. That would be a very involved question
And
to
there's a-
contemplate different models.
There's a community expectation of self-contained.
Certainly from some elements of the community, they very much is, yes.
Yes.
We made those decisions before the legislature said that we had to offer.
Well,
So we still have kids that are getting it in the homeschools
Our
at this
EAP
point.
Well, our EAP program existed prior to the legislation. And so, once the legislation was there, and we had a kind of different honors type programs that had come and gone at the junior high level, and then we landed on our self-select challenge. Once the legislation was there, we put a group together and just determined that our junior high model for the most highly capable would model the EAP model kind of coming up through the system. So EAP had existed long before that. I mean, the question is, can what are the demands on the teacher of trying to meet that need of the most highly capable students within a heterogeneous classroom?
But I just want to ask a clarifying question. If my daughter was in EAP and I wanted her to stay at her home school, the teacher has, or somebody at that building has to provide her those services.
As of last year.
Right, so correct, and I understand that. So I'm wondering over time, how many parents might opt, and this might be something good for us to keep track of. I think I mentioned at Bear Creek, how many parents might opt out and stay in their homeschool, and then is it costing us more, and is it more
Well, we
to?
Yeah, and we will absolutely have all the hard data on that.
Yeah,
And so my sense is, I would want to defer to Nancy for the definitive answer, but my sense is there's still a strong desire for a program like that.
probably.
Yeah.
But once you know, like for myself, if I knew I could stay at my own school, it could change people's perception, especially as more kids that possibly could be served better.
Yeah, as we're looking towards next year, we're looking at more EAP classes, not fewer. So the trend would seem to be in the opposite direction, but we would definitely be able to know how many people qualified, how many students qualified for EAP who made the choice to stay in their home school versus made the choice to join EAP. We'll definitely have that data. And should have it.
Yeah, I think it's.
Should have it pretty soon, because I think we're right in the middle of that right now.
Yes. A couple of things that struck me when I was reading through this was that on page 5, perhaps the most profound and enduring lesson learned was that all the components of this are interdependent and that they need it all to be implemented in concert. And the heterogeneous groups is definitely one of them. And I think just thinking back to that conversation, that was not my issue. My own son double jumped in math, and he was in a regular class, and the teacher had strategies to use to further him in his track. Now, did he reach the pinnacle of his capability within that group? I don't know. That's a different question. But I think thinking about that conversation, the parents want to know that it's intellectually stimulating to their child and their child is advancing. I think the opportunities for exploration will be appealing, and as a component of this whole thing, I think that's part of the conversation. And I think getting away from the stand and deliver model will automatically take some of the angst out of it, because it's no longer just teaching to the, as they said, lowest common denominator. It's really groupings of students working at their level to meet their needs. And so I think the way that we communicate it and the way that, and the options that we're adding for parents and students will help ease some of the angst around this particular issue.
And you may have not gone down this road very much. I know Bellevue in their middle schools call their humanities honors. So everyone is in a heterogeneous class, but they call them, you're enrolled in humanities 6.
Better way to-
Honors humanities 6. You know, except in math they have different answers, but you know, in Timber, like Wobegon, but in Timbercrest, like Frank, he didn't know it, but he was taking challenge math interspersed with kids who were 1 and 2 years younger than him. He didn't know it, and when I figured that out, I wasn't gonna tell him because it would have stressed him out. But here he was, someone who was not advanced in math, in a class with a more rigorous curriculum. You know, and now in 10th grade, that was last year in 9th grade, in 10th grade, he's, you know, doing pretty well. So there's heterogeneous, and then there's heterogeneous. You know what I mean? Like, it depends on what the basic curriculum is.
It was the structure of the class, yes.
Well,
The
but
structure and the
it's-
curriculum using the challenge curriculum.
Right, so depending on what your baseline is in the heterogeneous, and you know, and that would be something I'd be curious to get your guys' take on too, because if we're, you know, having this great, you know, opportunity to look at things, you know, if the idea is we want to make sure kids who we require for a grad requirement have to take advanced classes in high school, that they're ramped up and ready to go, within a heterogeneous, just throw this out, in a heterogeneous environment, you can do that if everyone is doing this, what Bellevue likes to call honors. Everyone is honors. I think what we call Bellevue, but something that we're out.
But and the model there is interesting. It's actually highly effective. Is rather than what we do with tracking, where we pull the top kids out and then we teach to the others, is we have them all together and we teach them all the honors level curriculum. And the students who are struggling receive extra support. And so there's actual programs that do that, like AVID, or schools that just create those support pieces within the school so that all students are able to perform at that level. So,
I was talking to one of the math teachers from Skyview Junior High who teaches a algebra course where all kids who could be in algebra are. And he was saying how powerful the conversations are and how engaged the kids are when you have the 7th, 8th, and 9th. So it really raises that level of conversation up.
and we do a challenge algebra curriculum for all of our students. The 9th graders take the challenge algebra curriculum.
So, no, go ahead. Well, just to finish what I was thinking, the other component of that conversation around challenge was whether or not the teachers believe that all students could learn at a high level. And I think that is a huge underlying component to making sure that it's in place.
And I think the piece with that too is how do we help them see that? So if we do go this way, we want to be intentional about our professional development support for our teachers so they can also achieve at these levels. Sorry.
So with 30 years, and this is kind of the Bible of middle school, and this is what you're following, there should be plenty of statistics to show what kind of difference it made. Can we get some of that? And I'd like to see test scores specifically, achievement gap or opportunity gap results.
That's a good point. How does it address the achievement and opportunity gap?
Well, you would have,
I mean, I'm
you
seeing
would
that-
need teachers who believe that everyone
That's
could learn at the
right,
higher
right,
levels. And
yes.
so that's why I'm asking for maybe study something, just at least some statistics showing what's happened over the last 30 years on that.
We'll see what we can conjure up.
Thank you.
Well, they must have data about it, I would imagine.
And I've had 3 kids, and we've done every option from honors to self-select to EAP and EAP and not participating and staying at the home school. And my older 2 were 100%, but it wasn't about IQ. It wasn't about being in a class with other smart kids. It was being in a class with other kids that were motivated to learn. That when I heard complaints about their class, it wasn't that it wasn't challenging enough, it was that the other kids in the class, there was too much time spent on listening, and that they weren't getting to do whatever cool thing they were supposed to do that day. And I know that's a common issue, obviously, at middle school, whatever level they are. How do we get kids to choose to be motivated to learn? And that's, I think, what I'm hearing is the issue with the kids that are not in self-select or AP. Is that you're in a classroom full of kids
that are not putting their best effort in, and whether the teacher believes they can learn, the kid is believing that they're not interested, or it's not worthy, or they're not motivated. I don't know what the answers are
Well,
there.
I think that's the question that the teachers, need to unpack, which is,
How do you-
if they have a large percentage of their kids who aren't interested in what they're teaching, what is it about what they're teaching or how they're teaching it
Right.
that isn't accessible to kids?
Yeah.
And that's where I think, things like project-based learning or problem-based learning, things where kids can contextualize their learning to things that matter to them, really come into play much more. But if you just kind of keep trying to push that round peg into a square hole, eventually you have to look at the size of the hole and figure out what do I need to do differently.
The book speaks to exploratory and relevant learning opportunities. And so as we begin to work with the staff, what does that really look like in middle school? What does that mean?
Sounds like a lot of professional development.
And helping students grow into that desire for learning as well, so.
And challenging assumption, I mean, I would say it's some of the same work that's occurring around our PBIS as we look at sort of cultures of schools and how we maybe have traditionally viewed management of kids or school discipline, or whose responsibility is it to come to school ready to learn, all of those kinds of things. It's really being willing to challenge some of those perhaps long-held assumptions and beliefs and view them differently or filter them differently. And that's, we should be doing that work regardless of whether we're configuring our grade levels, but I think certainly reconfiguring our grade levels pushes that conversation.
I really like what you said, that's about challenging assumptions, because assuming that a kid doesn't want to learn because they're maybe not as interested in that, or they're moving around, or I think that's really good. And then what are the strategies to help to individualize? You guys use, that's the word I'm hearing, is individualize, differentiate, and maybe in their prior way of thinking it wasn't individualized as much, just in, the way school was done before. So then that left some kids over here, and maybe your kid like DJ, they go this way, but my daughter Victoria didn't go that way, yet she wanted to learn, she just didn't know how to learn. It didn't meet her need, but she was very, so that's probably, I think, I like that a lot, challenging that.
All right, where down do we go? Good question, good discussion, really good. So we have a subcommittee working on the middle school schedule. That's the big piece. Exploration of special services delivery models. This includes lab services, ELL services, and our special education services. Just making sure we're attentive to what are the service delivery models, what are the instructional approaches. Shannon Hitch will be facilitating the work of this group. It'll be a subcommittee. I feel like I'm going to be subcommitted out. And then we have the exploratory electives group that's going to begin to meet. We've already spoken to that, to the work around deciding what does that exploratory look like, what are the electives we need to have. And then the subcommittee for transitions. Again, I think I mentioned bringing the link coordinators together. We need to do the same thing with the web coordinators. They're very actively engaged with the work at the school, and we heard Josh at the high school talk about in web at North Shore Junior High, they do ongoing activities throughout the year. So we really need to, again, we need to get their expertise at the table to help design what the transition program looks like. We don't need to just create from scratch, because they've done it, they're doing it. How do we expand on it, improve it, and make it better? So that's. And, okay, questions?
So who's on the special services delivery models subcommittee? Is that a subcommittee?
It is going to be a subcommittee to be determined. Shannon Hitch will facilitate it.
And so it's just not set up?
It's not set up yet, yeah. We've got some working right now. We've got others that will be on hold till next fall.
So when we do subcommittees, do we bring people from the they're not part of the task force, they're from the outside of the task force? When we do subcommittees and all these
It'd be a little, Larry's right, it's a little bit of both depending on what the need is.
So we could incorporate different ethnic groups at this point, just not on our main task forces, but on some of these subcommittees.
We could look for that, yes.
When you pull in extra people, are you pulling
Yes.
in from the community or are you pulling in from staff only?
Oh, I see.
It would depend on what the task force it would depend on what the subcommittee is, for example, on transitions. We probably were gonna pull from internal first and work with our current web leaders and staff, and eventually we'll figure out how to go out and get some feedback from parents on some of that work, whether it's through the task force group or through PTSA, things like that. But each one has a little different look.
So the one that's on the curriculum, that has a couple of our parents, right?
Yes.
So there are parents on that one.
Well, parents that are already on the committee? Or are they
They're-
pulled in for just the subcommittee?
For the one, Carol,
The
challenge.
challenge course,
Right now, we have it's structured that there'll be 4 parents, 1 from each pathway, and 2 of them will be from the task force, and then will be 2 from community at large. So we'll figure out who those parents will be. Typically, in a subcommittee, what I've done is emailed the principals and said, hey, this is the group that needs to start meeting. Do you have parents that you can recommend, that you've worked with, that you are in your schools, that have a vested interest? And then we contact those. That's how I get the ones for the athletic subcommittee, and they've been fabulous.
So specifically to the special services delivery models, are you going to follow that? Or
Yeah, I haven't even
What are
talked
your
with
thoughts?
Shannon yet about that. We haven't even dug into that one. It'll be next year. It'll be next year process. But I'll keep your thoughts in mind.
Thanks.
Prior to, the last month or so, I didn't realize the shift in thinking was so huge that it was more elementary than high school.
That's a good way to sum it
That
up.
was, yeah, that's a really very,
That's why I think grading is very interesting.
oh, it is.
Do you think
Because I think when you go to A to F, parents naturally start thinking on transition.
Oh, grading, I didn't answer your question.
yeah.
To Kim last night,
Which is okay. Over here, Dawn, who wants to answer that question?
I'm
done answering questions.
Yeah, it's, we've wrestled with that a little bit. When we look at standards-based, it's kind of, they all come together. There's standards-based curriculum, standards-based instruction, standards-based assessment, standards-based grading. So we have all these pieces that are so essential. And, we already have the standards-based curriculum. We're doing that, and we have standards-based instruction. And our assessment is as well. So we come to the grading piece, and we know that we have, at a grassroots level, we have different schools that are already working with standards-based assessment, and would be very interested in moving into the standards-based grading. So there's a lot of interest, and I know my junior high and a couple others as well in that, where teachers are already kind of playing with that concept and piloting it. Whether we look systemically at, do we have a standards-based report card for middle schools? That's a good question. That's part of what we'll talk about
Came up last night
when we have
from
that
parent.
subcommittee. So we're finding each one of these are wonderful ways to think about what we're doing, and it's a great opportunity to put ourselves through a lens and look at it in a different way, and not overtax the system with too many changes. If we're going to do it, how do we do it in a way that's thoughtful and intentional, and it's done right, because we don't want to overwhelm people. So really we're looking at even things that might happen in 2017, 2018. It doesn't all have to happen before we open. So that might be something that we look at after we open 2017, 2018. So just kind of looking at how all those pieces fit one another, and how our teacher capacity for learning one thing builds on the next, which builds on the next. So we're very intentional about how we move forward with that.
So we don't have standard report cards for all our junior highs?
It's the junior highs do a grade, they do A, B, C, D, E, F grading.
Oh,
we have a
so
standard report card, but
Oh,
not
yeah.
standards-based.
Right.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
so standards-based grading is not A, B, C,
Right.
D.
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's not.
No.
It's like
It's
the elementary.
The elementary, and
Right.
they just,
Yes.
right, so how do. the
But we have a
question-
standard way of doing it in all our junior
Yes.
highs. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going, what?
But we do have teachers who are doing standards-based assessment within their classroom.
Okay, makes
So
sense.
they grade kids according to assessment, and then they convert it
To
to a letter
the-
grade.
Kind of like a rubric in a way.
Right, right. I'd
Yeah.
say probably 50 to 60% of my teachers are doing
Yes.
that
Just
already.
Yeah.
Their schools are doing it. So the teachers are very excited about that concept, and we're just kind of letting that grow on its own.
I love how we're seeing this as an opportunity to just make some big system changes that
Yeah.
would be positive and really, if anything came through in this book, it was that it's all built around the student need.
Yeah, and I just, that whole mind shift about instead of trying to force them to act older, almost taking advantage, what you were talking about, maybe about taking advantage of how their brain is working, and instead of fighting it. You know, that's, no, because that's kind of, you know.
We could have a lot better 8th grade year.
Embrace the chaos.
We were doing something last night, and I can't, the task force, we did many things last night, but at one point I remember a teacher said, I love the fact that the task force and our core mission is always about the kids and what's best for the kids. Oh, good, we're on that. I mean, it's just that we're taking it back to that, it's always about the kids.
Always exciting. And we're seeing that in the building, staff have discussions and like, but that wouldn't be in the book. Like, there you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
And resource capacity for all of us.
Thank I think I've said before that I think the middle level is where we have the most action around grade reconfiguration, and so thus our desire to spend a little bit more time today.
Truly, it's been
I'll
charged
get
by
you
now.
that, I'm gonna go get you one.
Together and-
Yes.